people say, oh, well, he's delusional. He thinks he's a rock legend. He is a rock legend.
Do you ever have a moment where you see somebody that you kind of know that you recognize from the past, like either an old coworker or high school friend, and you want to say something to them like, "Hey, Steve," but you just can't do it?
Yeah.
And then that ruins the whole rest of your day because you should have just done the decent thing and said, just hi to that person that you recognized.
You avoided the potentially slightly awkward conversation of them not knowing who you are.
Or just the 1% chance of it being wrong. But it's a lose-lose proposition because I had that moment on the way to your house. I went to Starbucks and the person in the drive-thru window was an old coworker of mine. I'm sure of it, but also I don't know if she recognized me. I have different glasses since then and it's been a long time. So I don't know if it was just an ordinary interaction to her that she's already forgotten about, or if she is just seething with hatred at me
for not saying hi.
And honestly, Cal, that's why this episode is going to suck, because I'm still agonizing over not saying hi. All right, I'll do it right now. Hi, Anya. It was good to see you today. Welcome to Polishing Turds with Nick and Cal. My name is Nick.
I'm Cal.
And this is the show where we take a deep dive into the wonderful world of bad music. Season 4, baby. We're back.
Yeah, man.
It's a brand new year. New opportunities, new crap to explore.
I'm just happy we recorded this on New Year's Eve as opposed to New Year's Day.
Yes. Okay. It's technically 2023 still.
Yeah. Right now, I'm just I'm going to be a little slow from sleep deprivation. But if we had recorded it tomorrow, I'd just be straight hungover.
No, you guys, trust me, guys, you do not want hungover Cal.
No. Drunk
Cal is a very, very fun Cal. We haven't had enough of drunk Cal on this podcast. Maybe someday in the future, but no. Cal is right to
hangover. Cal is 100%. It's either brain dead or slightly irritated, and those are the moods.
And you don't want to be slightly irritated when my whole job is to present to you irritating music. Okay, but yeah, we are gonna have a very fun year. We've got a lot of artists that we are either planning to or thinking of covering. But really, I want your suggestions, guys, of who do you really want us to take on in this coming year? And to that end, I am proud to announce that we finally are back up on Instagram. Yay.
Hooray.
We are now polishing.podcast. So everybody, make sure you switch apps and follow us on polishing.podcast. My current theory, this may or may not be correct, is that the problem with our Instagram page before is that Meta somehow doesn't like the word turds. I don't know. This company has engineered elections and, enabled genocides in third world countries. But
you can say I'm a member of ISIS and this is my page. Just don't say turds.
Yeah, it's turds is where they draw the line. But, we're going to skirt that line because that's how badass we are. And speaking of badasses, today we are going to talk about a late, great Chicago legend who whoops a camel's ass. It is Wesley Willis.
Dude, I love this guy. We're starting season 4 with one for us.
Yes.
Every now and then we do this. That's why you got to suggest new artists to us. I think we covered all our
otherwise we're going to cover weird outsider art that only 4 people have heard of. But no, this guy is he's not a major artist. This is going to be someone he's got a cult following. He kind of emerged out of Chicago in the 90s. And the only reason that I know of him was because back in high school, I was really plugged into the Alternative Tentacles cinematic universe. And this guy put out a couple of albums on Alternative Tentacles, thanks to Jello Biafra, one of my heroes. But how would you, just at a glance, how would you describe Wesley Willis, like who he is, what his whole deal is.
He definitely comes off like a dude who is 1 week away from homelessness all the time.
Mm-hmm.
He's clearly very mentally unstable.
Yes.
But there's just like, when you hear his music, you'll know there's something endearing about his music.
Yeah. And endearing, because like this is not Yes.
No, you'll see it's bad
Rush.
music for sure. But there's something like, once you start digging into the Wesley world, I don't know, there's something that keeps bringing me back to this guy. He's he's not homeless, as he's so clarified in the Howard Stern interview we watched.
Yeah.
But he comes off like he would be in most regular scenarios.
He definitely, he's got that feel about him,
Yeah,
for sure.
he's a guy that if, let's say someone asks him a question, he's going to give you an odd answer.
Yeah.
Like, you almost wonder if he almost assuredly has some undiagnosed learning disabilities, and
Yeah, well,
on top of some other things that Nick will get into.
Yeah, for sure. But the music itself is just very screwball-y and
Yeah.
at the surface very simple. But
Well, he's written exactly maybe like 3 or 4 songs that he does over and over.
yeah, 3 or 4 songs out of which he made like 50 albums.
Yeah.
I feel like this episode is going to be like a combination of Viper and the Shags,
Mhm.
In terms of the oddity of what he brings to the table, mixed with the prolificness of how much he was able to produce with that very simple formula. But these are some of my favorite episodes, these ones where we just cover weird, random outsider artists. So I think we're going to have a lot of fun with this one. Now, before we really dive in, I want to set a scene for you guys. Imagine you're riding a metro bus in a major city. You see a man step onto the bus, a large, disheveled man with cheap sweatpants and unkempt hair. He's wearing an oversized fanny pack stuffed with CDs, listening to one of those CDs on headphones at full volume. You notice that he appears to talk to himself. Indeed, he seems vaguely disturbed. All of a sudden, the man begins cursing at the top of his lungs, saying things like, "Shut the fuck up! And suck a polar bear's dick!" He creates a scene, freaking out other passengers, until finally the bus driver stops the bus and he's thrown off. Now, chances are, if you've ever used public transportation in an urban area, you've probably seen something similar to what I just described.
That's what I was thinking the whole time. I was like, I rode the bus in Milwaukee, and that wasn't that weird.
I lived in Seattle for 4 years. I never had a car. I've seen this guy before. But if you had witnessed such a spectacle, specifically while riding a CTA bus in Chicago during the 1990s, there is a decent chance that the individual in question might have been one of the most legendary outsider artists of his generation. Wesley Willis was an independent artist from Chicago who self-produced dozens of albums in the 90s and 2000s. His unique style and larger-than-life persona attracted a cult following which came to include major Chicago figures in the music scene and beyond. People like Billy Corgan, Eddie Vedder, and the aforementioned Dead Kennedys singer Jello Biafra. Wesley's songwriting formula was absurdly simple, basically little more than a series of spoken word rants accompanied by pre-programmed keyboard melodies. But these rudimentary ditties were crafted with a voice that was raw, honest, hilarious, and deeply personal. When you first listen to a Wesley Willis song, you think to yourself, anyone could have done that. But when you really look into it, you realize that nobody, and I mean nobody, could ever do it like him. And I should have mentioned at the start, Wesley Willis tragically is no longer with us. He passed away in 2003, a little more than 20 years ago. So I hope this episode, even when we're making fun of him, does justice to his memory somehow. All right, Cal, are you ready?
Yes, I am ready.
Let's polish this turd.
McDonald's is a place to rock. It is a restaurant where they buy food to eat. It is a good place to listen to the music. People flock here to get down to the rock music. Rock and roll McDonald's. Rock and roll McDonald's. Rock and roll McDonald's. Rock and roll McDonald's. McDonald's will make you fat. They serve Big Macs. They serve quarter pounders. They will put pounds on you. Rock and roll McDonald's. Rock and roll McDonald's. Rock and roll McDonald's. Rock and roll McDonald's.
Dude, that's the song I think everyone knows by him, if you know him.
Yeah, that's kind of the quintessential Wesley Willis tune.
Yeah, and I heard it. My introduction to him was that, if you remember the website E-Bombs World.
Oh, really?
Way back in the day of like amateur-ass Flash animation, someone made a shitty music video for that, and that's when I first heard it.
I didn't know that they did something with him. I honestly can't remember exactly how I got into Wesley Willis. It was probably through the Alternative Tentacles website somehow. That was at least how I knew that I could trust, because back then, like, Jello was like my personal Jesus.
Right, so if he signed it to the
if
label,
he
it's good.
It must be true. But in this case, he happened to be right. But no, that's like, McDonald's is a place to rock. It's just, how could you open a song better than that? Yeah, so as I said, quintessential Wesley Willis song. And, it's pretty much easy to break down the formula, but you had the verse, which was just 4 spoken word lines. You had the chorus, which is just the song's title, Rock and Roll McDonald's, belted out 4 times in a beautifully off-key voice.
Yes.
And of course, like, probably the most notorious feature, the backing track, which is just one of the pre-programmed accompaniment tracks on Wesley Willis's Technics KN2000 keyboard.
Oh, you find people at Technics. I don't think they knew how good of a backing track they made. A man could get 50 albums out of it.
So because like a lot of modern keyboards come with this, and you wonder, like, okay, this is going to be used at like a kid's party by a lazy, birthday band. They certainly weren't thinking that an entire artist would build his whole career out of it. I love that. But no one, anyone could have done that, but no one else thought to do it. Lastly, we would be remiss not to mention one of the most important signatures of a Wesley Willis song. But before we can do that, I want to show you how this song ends.
Rock over London, rock on Chicago. Wheaties, represent champions.
Oh, it's the best.
Yeah, so every single Wesley song ever ends with Rock Over London, Rock on Chicago, and then a random advertising slogan. If he was alive today, the first thing I would ask him would be like, how did you think of that?
Right.
Why Rock Over London? Okay, Chicago, he lived there.
But if you did ask him that, he'd say something like, because that was on TV. Like, he's not gonna like give you a real answer.
No, he'd be even less cogent than that. He'd be like, because I am a rock star. Everything he did was so wonderfully esoteric. But like any great songwriter, Wesley Willis's music is grounded in his own personality, and that personality was, to say the least, eccentric.
Just a little bit, just a bit of a oddball. So Wesley often greeted friends and neighbors with a headbutt instead of the usual handshake. I love this. People got used to it after he got kind of known that he did that. But Can you imagine being like the first maybe a dozen people that he headbutted? Oh, I mean, you'd have to be like, watch out for that guy. He headbutts.
Oh, and he would do that to like strangers that he met in restaurants. It's like, give me a headbutt. Like, what? No. Because remember, like, this guy, I don't know if I mentioned, this guy is 6'5", 300 plus pounds and black. So like,
I wouldn't want to be headbutt by him.
Not a lot of people's like natural, like, safe guy,
Mm-hmm.
And Cal, you had asked me off screen the other day why he had such a large, gigantic bruise in the middle of his forehead.
Yeah, he has almost like a small permanent horn.
Yeah, it kind of looks like that you're expecting either a horn or like some kind of third eye to sprout out of the middle of his forehead. But I think the story goes that this is just the result of headbutting people dozens of times every day.
You see what happens if you headbutt too much?
Maybe it accounts for some of his mental quirks too. Wesley was also a prolific ink pen artist who drew scenes of Chicago cityscapes and highways from memory, to the point where the license plate numbers and bus advertisements were accurate.
Okay, see, this confirms my theory. I'm amateur diagnosis, but you watch enough Wesley stuff, and even just his lyrics, you gotta wonder if he was on the spectrum.
I mean, just consider this next anecdote. He could tell you instantly, if you just like asked him on a random Tuesday, Wesley, how many days have you been alive? He took like 3 seconds and then gave you an accurate answer.
Yeah.
That's
textbook, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know it's a complicated condition, but I don't know. That just, to me, it just seems so obvious with him.
I know, like people whose brains work this way are just like wizards to me.
Yeah.
It's magical, and like, cause like I can't even do fucking long division, Cal. I'm a total fucking idiot.
For an engineer, I'm pretty bad at like basic math.
Yeah.
Like, give me complicated concepts and I'll wrap my head around it. But if you ask me like a random multiplication, I got to sit and think out it just as long as anyone else.
Yeah. And Wesley, the converse of that was that this guy was a guy that couldn't manage his life in a lot of basic ways. Like, he had to rely on friends and neighbors to manage his finances and his career and things like that. He was very dependent on other people in a lot of ways, but he also just had these really just astounding abilities, and the actual drawings that he did were pretty legit. But one of the most notorious features of Wesley Willis and his legend was his mental health. Wesley suffered from chronic schizophrenia, an illness that tormented him throughout his adult years. He heard voices in his head, which he referred to as demons. These demons constantly insulted and undermined Wesley, calling him an asshole and a jerk, and doing everything possible to discourage his art. He even had names for these three demons: Heartbreaker, Nerve-wrecker, and Mean Sucker. Wesley's art was both an escape and a form of therapy, a way to deal with these demons, drown them out, and ultimately prove them wrong.
Did the demons tell him their names, or did he...
I never figured that out.
I guess it's hard to even say. It's hard to even wrap your head around, because he is the demons, but his own brain doesn't know that.
In my personal mythology, I like to imagine that the demons are external and are real, and he did have to fight them like this three-headed Ghidorah monster. I think it would make more sense if he named the demons, because if a demon comes to you and is like, "My name is Mean Sucker," well, if you call yourself Mean Sucker, like you're really someone that cannot be reasoned with. That's a very terrifying prospect.
I'm trying to think of famous groups of three that the demons could be, like Mo, Larry, and Curly or something.
it's the
Blink 182. My demons
Mark,
are just
Tom, and Travis.
My demons are just the three guys from Rush. I've been hearing Tom Sawyer in my head for the last 20 years.
No, it's mine and not mine.
Go away, Getty.
Now, as far as the subject matter of Wesley's music goes, this too is extremely consistent and personal. Indeed, Wesley mainly sticks to a handful of themes. And you guys know me, I love to arrange things into little categories, so that's what I've done with Wesley Willis's music. And this whole next section is going to outline the 6 major lyrical categories of Wesley Willis's song. And keep in mind, this is a voluminous body of work. He has over 50 CDs that he put out. Nobody actually knows for sure how many Wesley CDs there are.
Because that's the problem with artists like this. He's just handing them out at like bus stops and shit.
Yeah.
There could be a weird one out there that he only made like 10 copies of, or you don't know.
Yeah, and this kind of like predates the internet age by enough that like I'm sure there were some tapes and CDs that were lost in translation.
Mm-hmm.
And so much like Viper, I have to sadly announce that I was not able to listen to the full discography for this episode.
That honestly, dude, that would have been akin to Guantanamo torture. Because the thing with, like we were saying with Wesley, and as you guys will soon hear as we get into some clips, it's the same fucking song over and over. So if you listen to 50 albums of that,
I'd be like Chinese water torture, you know?
Yeah, buckle up. I hope you really liked that rock and roll McDonald's keyboard do, because you're going to hear a lot of that in this episode. All right, so the first category is what I'm calling concert reviews. Now, Wesley was an obsessive concert goer, and many of his songs are basically just his descriptions of shows he saw in person. And these songs are very formulaic. The first verse always describes where the band played and how many people saw the show. The second verse contains a series of Wesley patented comments like, "The rock show was awesome," and "It whooped a camel's ass." The third verse usually describes when the concert was over and whether or not people were able to meet the band. Like, I'm not kidding. That's every song in this category, which is probably 30% of his discography. So out of all the many, many examples of this song, I chose his review of a Morbid Angel concert.
Hell yeah.
Because I figured Cal would like that.
I love it.
All right, let's check it out.
This band played at the Aragon. About 3,000 people were at the show. The heavy metal was a jam session. The concert was very delightful. Morbid Angel, Morbid Angel, Morbid Angel, Morbid Angel. The band played it on. The band got down like a masochist. The crowd roared like a lion in a cage. The jam was excellent. Morbid Angel, Morbid Angel, Morbid Angel, Morbid Angel.
I don't think I have ever heard anyone describe Morbid Angel as a jam session.
A jam session.
That's literally the opposite of what they do.
They are also very delightful.
Yeah, it's very delightful.
So that's a very typical concert review. And I often wonder when I listen to these types of songs, is there any artist he doesn't like?
I was thinking the exact same thing. To walk into something like Morbid Angel and just leave going, that was delightful, is pretty obscure and strange.
Yeah, and he genuinely liked heavy metal music. He would listen to death metal, but he also listened to seemingly everything else, because he's got songs about Radiohead, he's got songs about Alanis Morissette, he's got songs about Urge Overkill, just just every artist that came to Chicago, it seems he would see them and do one of these songs.
I wonder if he ever saw a band that he was just like, this sucks, and just left.
There's only one example I know of that comes close to that. So there's a song about the band Lotion, who is one of those forgotten indie bands from the 90s. And he liked the band, he liked the show, but in the third verse, Wesley says, "The lead singer of Lotion was not nice at all. He was a stupid jerk, but otherwise, the show is terrific."
Damn. That's the meanest thing I've ever heard him say about someone.
And we'll see, Wesley Willis was universally described as this big teddy bear of a man that everybody loved. Everybody in his life thought he was fantastic. Even when he had his schizophrenic outbursts, he's just one of those true, genuine souls. So I believe him. I don't know the name of the lead singer of Lotion, but I fully believe that he is a stupid jerk.
If something evil comes out about him, Wesley Willis knew the whole time.
Yeah, Wesley had it pegged. Now, on the whole, I think that this category is probably my least favorite of Wesley Willis songs out there.
I'm with you. Because as you can find, there's a lot of Wesley Willis stuff that is quite funny.
Yeah.
Not in a at him way, in a he said something actually pretty funny, and you don't you don't really get that in the concert review ones.
No, this is the most predictable of all of his music. But the next category is a little bit better. This is one I'm calling personal tributes. You see, Wesley liked to dedicate songs to his friends and acquaintances, and for me, I find these songs to be quite endearing. There's quite a few examples, but I'm going to pick the song that he wrote about Jello Biafra, who became a close personal friend of his.
You are a good punk rocker. You are a singing maniac. You can really sing your ass off to the max. You are a good person. Cello Biafra, Cello Biafra, Cello Biafra, Cello Biafra. You are a rock and roller. You used to be the lead singer of the Dead Kennedys. You sing for the band Large. Keep on whipping it up. Cello Biafra, Cello Biafra.
I feel like getting a Wesley Willis song written about you when he was alive is like one of the best honors you could have.
You know, Jello himself actually had a little quip about that. He says, who needs a Grammy or a Bammy when you can win a Wesley? And he's totally right. Like, I think that would be the ultimate honor to have Wesley sing about you, even if he used the exact same lyrics for that song, which he probably would do.
I would be pissed off if he changed something. Like, this isn't a Wesley song anymore.
Cal, you are a nice person. You are an electrical engineer. You are on the podcast Polishing Turds. Keep on whipping it up. I also love these songs because, like, they read like a birthday card from a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
You know, like it's so simple, but just really charming too. Now, the third category of Wesley songs is what I'm going to call true crime. And it's basically just stories that involve criminal activity of some sort. Keep in mind, this guy was born and raised in Chicago, so he had quite a lot of experience with that.
Yeah, and I would guess not in one of the nice areas.
Oh, yeah, no, we'll get into it, but not at all. Now, some of the songs are inspired by things that Wesley experienced personally or stories he read about in the newspaper, but sometimes he would go out on a limb and talk about a historical figure, and that's kind of where we're going with this next sample. This is a song called Al Capone.
Al Capone was a hoodlum. He was a gangster. He kills people in gangland style. He is a stupid asshole. He is full of shit. Al Capone, Al Capone, Al Capone, Al Capone. Al Capone gunned down my brother. He killed him with an Uzi submachine gun. He pumped 20 bullets in him. He stole his hot rod. Al Capone, Al Capone, Al Capone, Al Capone.
I'm starting to get giggly, man. You listen. This is the magic of Wesley. Like, you listen to too many of these. You listen to a song, and then you get to the next one, and it starts with that exact same fucking drum fill.
Yeah,
and it starts to get really funny. And I always look forward to the chorus too, even though I know exactly what it's gonna be.
Yeah, it's like, oh, how's he gonna do it this time? No, it's just like I've been on this kick of watching like the old Showa era Godzilla movies. And it's the exact same thing. Like, you know exactly when the monsters are going to appear. Like, they usually like reuse a lot of the same stock footage of destroying Tokyo, but I still love it every single time. Oh, yeah. So Al Capone, stupid asshole, it turns out.
Yeah. If Wesley had been alive, do you think we would have got a Donald Trump song? I feel like maybe, I don't know, maybe he wouldn't have touched it.
I get the feeling he wouldn't have liked him, but maybe that's just me projecting positive things onto Wesley because I like him. He did a song, interestingly, about Bill Clinton while Clinton was president, and it's like, it's all just like very generic, nice things.
Well, yeah, he's not gonna like have some complex political opinion. No. I'm maybe thinking more. He's like, your hair looks like a rat nest, you know? Like, quit turning yourself orange, you asshole.
I get the feeling that he probably would have said something nice if it was just Trump on The Apprentice, maybe. Yeah. But like Trump really in person, tough boss. You know, saying throw them out and, you know, calling Mexicans rapists. I gotta think Wesley would have to have a negative reaction to that. But I don't know. It's good that he didn't live to see this hyper polarized hellscape that we live in now.
He left before we went off the rails.
Yeah. But, you know, as far as this song goes, and I have to
mention this, being the pedantic jerk that I am. I had to kind of fact check the lyrics to this song. And while it is true, as Wesley claims in the third verse, that Al Capone did probably beat 2 men to death with a baseball bat, but he never used an Uzi submachine gun because the Uzi hadn't been invented till the 1950s. So
I'm surprised that's the one you went for instead of Wesley Willis. He shot my brother.
Yeah, also not possible because Wesley's brothers weren't born till the 70s or the 60s, I guess. But yeah, I mean, just, you know, maybe do a little bit more due diligence in your research next time, because I know that these are all meant to be a doctoral thesis, every one of these songs. All right, so the next category is, this is going to be an even more fun one. So a lot of critics like to label these types of tracks as, quote, bestiality songs, but I prefer to think of them as anti-demon songs. Now, I'll explain my reasoning in a little bit, but first, let's just take a listen. This song is called Suck a Caribou's Ass.
Suck a male camel's dick. Suck a hyena's ass. Suck a Doberman's cock. Suck a snow leopard's ass. Suck a rhino's dick. Suck a caribou's ass. Suck a caribou's ass. Suck a caribou's ass. Suck a caribou's ass. Suck a hippo's cock. Suck a honey badger's ass. Suck a llama's balls. Suck a Labrador retriever's dick. Suck a caribou's ass. Suck a caribou's ass. Suck a caribou's ass. Suck a caribou's ass.
Dude, can you imagine being a normal guy in a Chicago bus and some guy you've never met hands you a CD and you're kind of like, well, he was weird. I got to know what's on it.
Yeah.
And that's the track that fires up.
It's like, oh, I'll put this in my car when I drop the kids off at school. Suck a caribou's ass.
Well, like the creativity of the animals he chooses, I really enjoy.
Yeah.
It's not just a leopard, it's a snow leopard.
Snow leopard, rhinos. We'll get into, he has obviously tons and tons of these types of songs. Some that I dug up: suck a pit bull's dick, suck a camel's ass, suck a polar bear's dick, suck a snow leopard's dick. That gets its own song, not just a mention in that verse. Suck a werewolf's dick. Now he's getting into cryptids.
Yeah.
Suck a camel's booty hole. I like that one a lot. There's one album where he has 3 songs titled respectively Suck a Swiss Hound's Dick, Suck a Greyhound's Ass, and Suck a Great Dane's Cock.
Jesus Christ.
It's just on a major dog kick on that album for some reason.
If it was anyone else, I would be like, that shit is gross and not funny. But knowing what I know, like, this guy makes it funny.
And the thing to understand about those types of songs is he's not directing that at you, the listener. He's these songs, and he's been very clear about this, these are specifically directed at the demons in his head who were constantly fucking with him, swearing at him. So this is just him clapping back at those demons, which is why I call them anti-demon songs.
It's one very specific insult, but he's sticking with it.
I guess that's why they call him mean sucker, because he is so busy sucking all these different animal phalli.
He's trying to blow his way through the animal kingdom.
Yeah, he's like, anything
that has one, he needs to try.
Yeah, he's like the Teddy Roosevelt of like bestiality. All right, so 5th category, and this one is hands down my favorite. I'm calling it general humor because it encompasses all of the weird, random Wesley songs that are just plain funny. Now, to me, I think this encompasses the rock and roll McDonald song that we played at the beginning, but also this next song that we're going to play, which, Cal, I believe that you agree with me on this. I think this is Wesley Willis's masterpiece.
Yes, this is the song.
This is Cut the Mullet.
Do something about your long, filthy hair. It looks like a rat's nest. Do something about your mullet. Get out the hair clippers, jerk. Cut the mullet. Cut the mullet. Cut the mullet. Cut the mullet. mullet. Get the rat's nest off your head. Get that crazy ass mullet off your skull. Take your ass to the barber shop. Tell the barber that you're sick of looking like an asshole. Cut the mullet. Cut the mullet. Cut the mullet. Cut the...
Oh man, that's in my top 100 songs of all time. Unironically,
no, I mean, in my world, that ranks up there with like Rocket Man and Bohemian Rhapsody. Take your ass to the barber shop. Tell the barber you're sick of looking like an asshole.
That's one of those jokes, like, I've heard it 100 times, and every time I still laugh.
No.
And every time I see a mullet now, that's what goes in my head.
Yeah.
Him delivering that line that way.
I wonder if Billy Ray ever heard that song in the 90s, he probably would be scared to even enter the city of Chicago.
He probably would have had an identity crisis. He would have realized, like, this guy's right.
Man, I do look like an asshole.
Yeah.
No, but like those songs are precious, and like he could be really, really fucking funny. But even though Wesley was at times a masterful comedian, some of his very best songs are actually quite somber. Wesley was quite open about his struggles with mental illness, and his music was often a transparent form of therapy. And one of the best examples of this is a song titled simply Chronic Schizophrenia.
My mind plays tricks on me every time I say something. It brings evil voices out of my head and talks to me vulgar. Then suddenly I started raving. Chronic schizophrenia. Chronic schizophrenia. Chronic schizophrenia. Chronic schizophrenia. But when I have bad luck, I always hear evil voices talking to me vulgar. Everywhere I go riding on the CTA bus, all I hear is vulgarity. I hear no music at all. Chronic schizophrenia. Chronic schizophrenia.
God, you saved the heavy hitter for the last.
Yeah, no, it's not all peaches and cream, guys.
And now you'll have the context to hear that song and get why it's so heavy, at least for a Wesley song.
For sure.
He used a different backing track even.
It was actually a little down tempo.
Yeah.
There are quite a lot of songs like this where he'll just talk about like an event that happened, like where he had an outburst due to his mental illness, and he got thrown out of a bus or a church or something like that. And you could hear him feel the embarrassment afterwards. So not only is he being tormented psychologically by these demons that no one else can hear, but he's cognizant that he's causing a scene and disturbing other people, and he feels bad about that too. So it's just a double form of terror, and it feels so bad for him.
Yeah, for real.
So this is kind of a good transition into the next section of this episode, where we're going to talk about Wesley Willis's life. As that song hinted at, Wesley's life involved a great deal of difficulty, but really what we've presented so far is just the tip of the iceberg. In this next section, we're going to get into the life and times of Wesley Willis, and I got to warn you guys, it's going to get a bit dark. But I think you'll see that the fact that Wesley was able to overcome his struggles and earn a living as an artist is pretty damn heroic. And for this next section, I'm indebted to a lot of articles, but mainly I want to shout out this guy named Jeff Kilpatrick, who in 1994 made a short documentary called Wesley Willis as Himself, which ended up on YouTube. I had no idea how this got made, why it got made. It's just on YouTube, and otherwise would be totally lost media. That this guy clearly put a lot of work into it. He must have known Wesley personally. He actually mentions a lot of like specific addresses that he lived at various points in his life, but it's just like a very invaluable research tool that I just wanted to shout out, because I doubt this thing has more than like 10,000 views.
Right, in 94, that's like relatively early in Wesley's music career, right?
Yeah, so this is done as a personal tribute to a friend, I have to think.
Mm-hmm.
So Wesley Lawrence Willis was born on May 31st, 1963, the youngest of 10 children. He spent his entire childhood shuttling between a series of deeply poor neighborhoods in the south side of Chicago. His family situation was apparently so abusive that neighbors would call and complain about it, and when Wesley was just 6 years old, the family was split up by the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services. So neighbors call and complain about this abuse, and the kids are kind of sent to different places. Some of them are sent to foster homes. Others are kind of sent to live with other relatives. And that's just like, and again, doubly traumatic, because not only are you losing your parents, like however horrible they were, but you're also losing, especially for the youngest sibling, you're losing the people who like were probably the only figures in your life providing any type of guidance at all.
Yeah, for real. That's one thing I have learned as I've gotten older, is like the system is not necessarily the answer to an abusive household, because that has its own issues.
Yeah, for sure. Like people in CPS, they have the worst jobs in the world. I don't know how those people are.
Oh God.
I mean, they must be all alcoholics.
Yeah.
But it's just, this is a situation where, the solution wasn't much better than the problem. So Wesley was sent to live with his uncle in the town of Phoenix, Illinois, which is about 20 miles south of Chicago. And he lived there for about 10 years until that same uncle was arrested and charged with sexual abuse of a child.
Jesus Christ.
So I don't have any more information on that. I don't know if the child was Wesley or someone else, but either way, not good.
You gotta wonder when it's the uncle willing to take the youngest of the 10.
Yeah.
I can't accuse the guy of something I don't know. Like Nick said, I don't know, but
we don't know. But we know that this is not someone who should be in charge of a child.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure. So in 1978, at age 15, Wesley was sent back to Chicago to live in a foster home. But by age 18, he had aged out of that and had nowhere to go. So he moved back in with his mother, Annie, who by that point was living in the housing projects just off the Dan Ryan Expressway and right next to a set of train tracks. Like, I was able to Google Maps this particular spot in Chicago, and not only is it like one of the most like notorious housing project ghettos in Chicago, but it's right next to an expressway and railroad tracks. So like, these people aren't getting any sleep at all.
Yeah, that had to be loud as fuck. It's like that scene in Blues Brothers.
Yeah.
How often does the train go by?
And just another thing to point out, like 1978, Wesley was living in one of the worst parts of Chicago during a period where the murder rate was at historic highs. It's around 800 to 900 homicides per year. It's like almost 3 murders a day are happening in Chicago during this time. Like, it's even worse than it is now.
Right.
He describes the neighborhood as a war zone, but his home life wasn't any better because his mother was dating a guy named Roger Lee Carpenter, who was just an absolute piece of shit. He would severely beat and abuse Wesley's mother, Annie, right in front of Wesley. And for some reason, this to me is like even grosser. He would also force Wesley and his brother to watch as Annie gave him oral sex.
Oh, that's fucking vile.
Yeah, like just really just creepy.
That's psychological warfare on a kid. Like,
yeah.
Why would you do that besides to just break that person down forever?
Yeah, it's super fucked up. And in addition, of course, like, they're poor. They're dealing with a number of evictions during this time. And it's kind of a classic abuse story where Wesley knows that his mom is in constant danger. Like, he's being abused. He wants to escape, but he also doesn't want to leave his mother behind. So he's kind of, being pulled from 2 directions there. Now, during this very traumatic period, Wesley's only form of escape was his art. He had begun drawing as a teenager, and after several years, he was so good that he could regularly get his pieces sold on the streets of Chicago. By 1989, Wesley had saved up $600, which he intended to use to move into a place of his own.
But when Roger Lee Carpenter found out about his money, those plans were rudely interrupted. Roger woke up Wesley in the middle of the night by pointing a gun in his face and demanding Wesley hand over the cash. Wesley says that Roger later used that money to buy crack cocaine. That night, October 15th, 1989, was the first time that Wesley began hearing voices.
I think everyone listening kind of knew this was going that way.
Yeah.
This is how you got to wonder how much is trauma induced, because like a kid's brain can only handle so much shit.
Mm-hmm. And that is kind of, from what I understand, I'm not an expert, the nature of schizophrenia and other mental illnesses is they are triggered by trauma, and there's probably something latent there.
Yes,
obviously.
Schizophrenia can depend. Like there are people just genetically that are screwed.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, there's that also as well. It's like it's lingering there and it can get brought on.
Yeah.
It's something to do with how far your brain's lobes are apart.
Yeah.
And if you're like this exact distance, you're just gonna have it.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
So clearly you already know more than me, but
well, I don't want to act like I know everything either.
But everyone like can already tell, like whatever limitations this guy has, the trauma blunted any chance that he was going to be a truly functional human being. And it's really amazing that like he managed to go his entire life without going to prison or really honestly ending up in a mental hospital. Like it was that's pretty impressive considering who he is and what happened to him.
Next time I'm on the bus and someone starts yelling, "Suck a polar bear's dick,"
Yeah.
I will in the back of my head be going like, who knows what that poor man went through to get to this point.
For sure. I mean, it's hard, but we have to have compassion on all people because every homeless guy you meet in the streets has a really sad ass story.
Absolutely.
Like they were all abused by somebody at some point. It's interesting. Wesley actually has a song called Roger Lee Carpenter where he lays out this whole story.
Jesus.
And he uses the same backing track that we've heard for most of the theme songs that we've listened to. It's just so jarring to like know how dark this shit is. And it's the same track as Rock and Roll McDonald's.
Oh, man.
Now, not too long after this, Roger forced Wesley out of his home. At age 27 with nowhere to go, Wesley moved back in with his father, who, if you'll remember, was also an abusive figure in his life. Now, understandably, Wesley spent as little time at home as possible, instead spending his days riding buses around the city, drawing and listening to music. He began hanging out at a place called Genesis Art Supply on the north side of Chicago. He spent hours there every day drawing, selling his work, and chatting it up with staff members who came to regard him as a friend. Some of these workers at Genesis eventually helped Wesley move into a decent apartment, and this is when things finally started to turn around. In the early 90s, Wesley began dabbling in the world of music. According to the internet, his first full-length CD is a 1994 album called Radiohead, which of course features a review of that same band. But again, I want to emphasize that we don't have a comprehensive catalog of Wesley's music, and I have to think that he started making music a few years before that.
Yeah. No, there's definitely something floating around out there.
And as far as like how he learned to play the keyboard and how he developed his style.
I don't think he ever learned, man. He's hitting play and just ranting.
Well, he knows what keys he want to use. Like he is pressing like different. He said he once said he uses only 13 notes on the keyboard.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. So like he's just using them over and over. So he knows what keys he wants to use. He has an idea of how to like fix tempo and change pitch and stuff like that. But like in terms of like what made him choose that as a style, that's between him and God.
I do think it's just like this guy is the purest form of music as therapy I've ever seen.
Oh, for sure.
He had the shitty keyboard. He obviously didn't have money to get anything else.
Yeah.
He doesn't really know how to play it, but is he going to look up lessons or pay for lessons or have someone in his life teach him? No. He finds that backing track and goes, this sounds pretty good. And then he just starts saying what's on his mind. And then he learns that doing this, yelling, suck a polar bear's dick over that track for whatever reason, silences his demons.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's awesome. Good for him. However, I should note that in the early 90s, Wesley also performed in an ensemble
called the Wesley Willis fiasco.
Dude, I'm so excited for this. I didn't know this.
Oh, you see, you've never heard any of this stuff. Yeah, so this is like his main hustle for a minute in the early 90s. Basically, he had already met a bunch of friends in the Chicago like alternative music scene, and these guys decided to form a band with him. So it's like, so just imagine Wesley's, style set to hard rock music. That's what this was.
I am ready for this shit.
All right, here is a song by the Wesley Willis fiasco called Jesus is the Answer.
This is the song that I'm going to rap about, which is called Jesus the Answer. Jesus is the answer to all your problems. He was the Savior. He died, you will go to heaven. I'm going to rap about this right now, and Jesus is the answer. I'll tell you about the time when Jesus was coming to Jerusalem. I was very grateful to hear about that stuff. Take it to me, it will make the best land to be the hand. Tell all to God with your might. I'm saying this again to let you know. Jesus is the answer. Jesus is the answer. Jesus is the answer. Jesus is the answer. Tell it like it is, Jack.
Dude, you can't form a band with Wesley because he would become such a diva. I can tell.
Well,
No, I'm joking. I just like thinking like he'd be in there like, he's backstage and he's like, this is not the correct amount of M&Ms. He's like, I cannot do the show.
can you even read a writer, motherfucker? No. Yeah, so the music is confident. It sounds like, mid-90s alternative stuff. And it's interesting. To me, it just doesn't have the same, like, oomph as those, like, stupid ass.
No, I'm completely
keyboard
with you.
songs.
Because everything we were just talking, like, what makes this guy so interesting is why he was even making these songs.
Yeah.
And when you take that part away, I'm just less interested.
Yeah, and like it just like, okay, I understand Wesley, but like the other four guys in the band, like what are you doing?
You're
here?
parasites to this guy.
Yeah. I mean they were his friend, but like also like you guys like clearly are different from him. You're trying to make real rock and roll music, like it's a weird meshing of worlds. Now, like ICP and many other artists that we've covered, Wesley was a relentless self-promoter. Having already spent over a decade hustling his artwork, he now made a habit of riding the bus across Chicago to peddle his CDs to anyone willing to listen. He also hung out at and attended concerts throughout the city. This helped build Wesley a network of musician friends who spread his music via word of mouth. In time, artists such as Billy Corrigan, Eddie Vedder, Mike D of the Beastie Boys, Jello Biafra, and White Zombie would all count themselves as Wesley Willis fans. In 1995, Wesley was signed as a solo artist to Rick Rubin's subsidiary American Recordings. He released 2 albums for that label, Fabian Road Warrior and Feel the Power. Now, the following year, the Wesley Willis Fiasco also was signed and released their first and only full-length album produced by the legendary Chicagoan Steve Albini. That album is titled Spooky Disharmonious Conflict Hellride. And that is all one word because, as we know, it was mandatory in the mid-90s to have album titles with a bunch of words mashed into one like that.
During this period, so this is pretty active for anybody.
Oh, 100%.
This is always a mystery with Wesley. Like, how cognizant of what is happening is he? Is he like playing rock star in his head and people are just using him along the way?
In his head, he is a rock star. He always described his music as rock and roll music. Like, I really think that in his head, he like thought he was Jim Morrison, like in his own kind of innocent, childlike way. He loved performing. He loved touring. He loved meeting people who liked his music. But he started to catch on with like a lot of these kind of hipster type people And all of a sudden, like, it's not just like selling your CDs on the bus anymore. Like, he's actually like doing radio interviews.
Right.
And, like, he got profiled by MTV. He went on Howard Stern. Yeah. So like, even though it seems like things are going well, but obviously it's stressful for anybody, right?
Yeah.
Like, just this period of when you're first starting to be in the music industry, touring is stressful for even the most stable person out there.
I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, you can imagine what this did to Wesley. So like in the mid 90s, he was touring for his solo stuff and for the Fiasco, and it just kind of proved to be too much. Like, he would kind of randomly lash out at his bandmates who were supportive and did genuinely try to like pick him up, but eventually it became too much, and they had to break up the band in 96. And then this kind of leads to the next section of the episode that I want to talk about. Now, obviously, Wesley never became legitimately famous. Like, he was never like
Who
Pearl
could've seen
Jam,
that coming?
Like, although personally, like, I would love to live in an alternate timeline where Wesley did become like Red Hot Chili Peppers level and like was hosting the VMAs.
Or can you imagine like going to like a huge venue, Madison Square Garden, stadium's full, and
Welcome.
He's out there with just that keyboard and just him in one spotlight. And can you imagine how much it would erupt when he hits play and you hear boom, boom, boom. Everyone goes nuts.
Dude, remember like Motley Crue? They would do that with Tommy Lee, like suspend his
like
drum kit and he's spinning all around. Like, just do that with Wesley. He's him and his keyboard. He's just pressing the button, being hung upside down. But no, like, he was a cult icon, and mostly among hipsters, and mostly among the kind of hipsters who were chronically single and just relish about talking about, hey, bet you never heard of this guy.
So us.
Us. I wrote that with me in mind. I didn't even want to throw you under the bus, but yeah, like, people like me love Wesley Willis. Surprise, surprise.
That was actually my biggest barrier, and one of the things I love most about my wife is I found someone else in the world who at the very least tolerates my weird ass music I am always putting on.
Oh yeah, if you can find somebody that will stop at the eye roll when you talk about shitty artists like that are weirdly fun, like, just lock that shit down, people. So in a sense, Wesley was successful, but throughout his career and even into the present day lingers a controversy around his fandom. Is Wesley being exploited? Are audiences appreciating him genuinely or ironically? Are people laughing with him or at him? And if it's the former, is this an ethical way to treat the music of a mentally disabled person? We've been hinting at this kind of in the whole build up to this section, but Cal, what are your kind of initial thoughts on this question of exploitation?
I do think that if he got too big, it does start to cross that line. Even like the Howard Stern interview we watched, the way Howard was handling, I'm just kind of like, when you start getting him into the realm of normal people, you get him outside the art crowd, it's going to turn into laughing at.
That's very true. And like a lot of the, when it comes to other musicians, artists, like people like Eddie Vedder are probably cognizant enough to know what they are dealing with.
Yeah,
and
you
like,
don't bring him on tour.
Yeah.
You don't make him your Joe C. Like,
yeah. So, but when it comes to normal people, like, the people in the mid 90s, they still thought wrestling was real. A lot of them, so you expose them to more and more people. It can get kind of dicey.
Well, and then I always liked South Park's take on this when Timmy is the singer of the Lords of the Underworld, and a lot of, a whole bunch of people are out there going like, you can't do this to a disabled person. They're getting mad, but Timmy loves being in the band.
Yes.
So there's that angle too of like, if it's all just Wesley's making his music and now he's getting paid for it, there is that argument to make. Yeah. I think the only reason I'm so cynical is I know the music industry through doing this show with you.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can avoid exploitation after a certain level of fame.
Yeah, no matter, even if you're fucking Freddie Mercury, like every musician ever has gotten exploited.
I mean, there's some guy out there who had the prospect of working with a mentally disabled man. He is licking his chops on how many ways he can screw that guy over.
Yeah. Yeah, we will definitely get to that in a little bit. But let's start with the arguments of those who say Wesley was being exploited. One such person is prominent music critic Stephen Thomas Erlewine, who I believe has made a number of other appearances on our show. This is a guy, like, he's like the Jim Cramer of the music world, where like just his take is always wrong, right? To the point where it's like iconic.
He hears Abbey Road for the first time. He's a huge step down for the Beatles.
So in a decidedly negative review for Wesley's Rock and Roll Will Never Die album, Stephen wrote, quote, "It's certainly admirable that Wesley has decided not to be tied down by his schizophrenia, but it often seems that his audience is laughing at him, not with him."
When does it seem like that? Were you at a show, Stephen? Like, where's he getting that from?
I mean, I think it's just he's going off of vibes. You know? And you know, I personally think you can laugh at and with something at the same time. It's not as neat of a dichotomy as it initially appears. Like, and I definitely am not laughing at Wesley himself.
Right.
You know, like, I think it is funny that when you hear that same beat 12 times in a row.
It is objectively funny too, like the way he describes things and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't think I don't think a fully cognitively able person would make music like this, 50 albums of this.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, it directly adds to the comedy of it a bit.
Yeah.
But I don't want to make that sound like, haha, disabled people are funny. That's not what I'm trying to say.
No, it's just like, this guy showed me a way of thinking about music that I never would have thought of myself. Like, versus like laughing at something, you know, like I
look at this big fat idiot thinking he can sing music. Like, I don't think anyone was that mean.
Like, we've laughed at a lot of music on this show. I'm thinking of like the Five Finger Death Punch drummer who made that Psychosexual.
Yeah. That
we were fully laughing at because it sucks. And it's by a guy that we know is already kind of an asshole.
Yes, yes.
You know, but Wesley, it's just not that way. We root for him. We want him to succeed. But Stephen doesn't have that take. And I think part of the problem is that he just genuinely does not like Wesley's music and can't understand why anyone would. So to him, like, the whole quirkiness of Wesley's approach is simply a byproduct of his mental illness. In fact, during that same review, he dismissed the entire album as, quote, "a batch of songs written by a schizophrenic."
See, this is exactly what I was trying to say. You get him too introduced to people that don't have any interest in the weird outsider art stuff, and you're going to get this reaction.
Yeah. And this is like, keep in mind also, this is the 90s. We have a very different frame of reference when it comes to mental health. Like, the word ableism, I don't think it was even in the popular consciousness.
Back in this time, we were all still calling each other the R word constantly.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, so we definitely did not, a lot of even the sympathetic portrayals of Wesley that you read from this time, like, don't have the same type of empathic framework that you would expect if this guy was around today. And that kind of leads to the next thing I wanted to discuss, which is that while I think that Wesley's mental illness is an important part of his story, the people who kind of put it front and center when talking about him, to me, they're missing the point a little bit. And that often included Wesley's own press agents, who just kind of leaned into the whole, look at this crazy guy, you know, angle. I want to kind of highlight this one press release from the mid-90s. So this is by, you know, people who are trying to hype Wesley up. And this flyer reads, "Is Wesley Willis God or Satan? Is this madness, or is it truth, or is it both?"
Ooh.
That's
Rock and Roll McDonald's. Is it madness, or is it truth?
That's so fucking hack to me.
It is.
It's just bad writing.
It really is.
Like, goddamn, is truth and madness, bro. Like,
this guy said suck a camel's dick, and I believed it.
So that press release came from the Mike Schneider organization, a PR firm that had been hired to represent the Wesley Willis fiasco. So this PR firm had worked for the likes of Black Crowes and Alanis Morissette, so I imagine they're the type of guys that you don't really say no to. Now, they claimed that while they usually charge artists $3,000 a month, they happened to like Wesley so much that they only charged him $2,000 a month. But even still, that is $2,000 a month to come up with bullshit like that.
Right. And this is a dude who's selling CDs to come up with that money.
Yeah.
That's a huge amount, I think, in 1994 dollars or whatever.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, no matter how many clubs they're playing, it takes a lot to earn $2,000 a month, not to mention the money you're giving back to promoters and the record labels, and then you got to pay these fuckers $2,000 a month to come up with, is it madness or is it truth?
Right. They prove with the one slogan they don't understand you at all.
Yeah. And of course, as we alluded to, surprise, surprise, Wesley was also taken advantage of by actual record labels. So the Rick Rubin-owned subsidiary American Recordings reportedly paid Wesley just $5,000 each for his 2 albums on that label, a sum that journalist Jim DeRogatis describes as ridiculously low.
That is, even though he is just hitting play on a keyboard and saying stuff.
Yeah,
that's an insultingly low number in the music business.
You know what? Him just hitting play on a keyboard, that's more than a lot of high-profile artists do these days.
That's true.
You know, he never lip-synced at his shows. You have fucking prominent fucking, VMA hosting rappers who lip-sync, who never write their own songs, who never compose a fucking word or produce jack shit. Like, he's way more of an independent artist than a lot of guys out there today that are making shit tons of money.
Oh,
So it's I don't know. It's
not about the art for people.
Yeah. So obviously, there were people in the industry who screwed Wesley over, as these types of people do to everyone who tries to make and sell music. Like, there's hardly a guy that you can think of where they got what was fully owed to them and nobody skimmed off the top, I literally can't think of anyone in history.
No, yeah, it's never happened.
So there was definitely exploitation there, but to me, the people who fully think that Wesley was totally being exploited, I think they just are ignoring how much Wesley hustled to get his career off the ground, and the people who focus on his mental illness are ignoring how seriously he took his own craft. So I want to share 2 quotes from a woman named Carla Winterbottom. She was a close friend of Wesley's who eventually became his roommate. Regarding Wesley's marketing hustle, what Violent J would call promoting, Carla said this: "He was savvy enough to realize what sold. He was a very smart marketer. In a sense, Wesley exploited his audience as much as anyone could have exploited him." And then regarding the music itself, Carla said, quote, "He took it very seriously. He'd pick around on the keyboard. He was very specific about finding the right key and tempo. Wesley crafted his music according to his own style. It's kind of charming and childlike, but also introspective and uplifting."
See, that's really similar to the Shags
to
me, where you're going how much of this is planned or not? You know?
It turns out a lot more than you'd think.
Yeah, it's because it's planned in a way that makes sense to him.
Mm-hmm.
Just because we're all right, it's all the same loop. In his mind, it's yeah, but I changed the tempo a bit.
Yeah, he would tweak things a little bit. He would speed it up, slow it down. He would add little sound effects here and there. He was also kind of oddly specific about how long he wanted a song to be. So he does tell his producers this has to be between 2 minutes 42 seconds and 2 minutes 53 seconds.
Oh, okay. So that explains why some of his songs have such weird middle sections where there's no words or anything.
Yeah, you kind of don't get that from our samples, but most of these songs have a bridge that's a minute and a half long.
Yeah, and it's that fucking keyboard thing. And every now and then he'll put in a fill where he resets the loop where you're not expecting. Or
yeah, he does weird random shit, but it's not random to him. He developed this style, he stuck with it. It's like the early Ramones, in his own way. So it's just, to kind of dismiss it as it's just a crazy schizophrenic guy hitting buttons on a keyboard, that kind of robs him of his agency, and that is kind of ableist in its own way,
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I overall, now that we've done this section, what's your verdict, Cal?
I have all this personal bias because of how I like listening to Wesley Willis. I don't think he's being exploited.
Mm-hmm.
Almost everyone I talk to that genuinely gets into this guy, it's laughing with.
Yeah.
And they leave with some appreciation. It's not just look at this big fat moron, you know?
Yeah, you would hope. Like, I'm sure there were some people out there that were like, haha, this guy sucks. But to me, you're more likely to do that with an artist who is already big and is being promoted by the major labels and just happens to be total schlock than you are going to do a guy who like literally comes in off the street and is playing music that's odd but clearly quite unique.
Yeah.
So I tend to think that, like, well, here's what I'll say is, like, if anyone tries to guilt trip you about liking Wesley Willis, like, fuck that.
Yeah, fuck them.
Like, if you're doing it in the same spirit that we are, where like you genuinely are happy that this guy made a living for himself, especially after living such a hard ass motherfucking life.
Yeah.
You know, he deserved some kind of validation. He clearly got that from his career, even when it was shitty for him. So I don't think the overall experience of wanting to listen to Wesley music is exploitation, but of course he was exploited in small instances by certain people who live to exploit.
Right. I know. It makes me really wish he had been born a little later. Because can you imagine if he had been able to self-release through the internet and like MySpace back in the day, how different his tale would be here?
Oh, for sure. I mean, you fucking stole my thunder, because the whole next section is basically, I think, so Wesley died in 2003. And I think that if he had lived into the internet age, he would have found more of an audience for this kind of stuff.
Well, and that weird meta humor is so much more popular now.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Honestly, like mid-2000s internet culture, like he would have fared really well in that world. People just wanted Arfenhaus, like whatever was the next random thing.
Yeah, and just think of how good he could have done in like the weird like Tim and Eric style humor. Any show from
Tim
that
and
genre.
Eric would have definitely had this guy on their show. Absolutely. He would have found an audience there. Although it's like I wrote a whole paragraph about that. But what you said earlier in this episode, Cal, kind of made me rethink that, though. It's that he also would have exposed him to normies, too. And like dumbass people who don't get it and who are naturally very hateful and trolly and would have made comments.
That's true. I didn't think about that. Because if he got popular on the internet, you would have a huge share of people flood in and be like, fuck this fat idiot. All he ever does is one song that...
Yeah, people are like saying the N-word, just like...
Yeah, that's true.
And Wesley strikes me as the type of guy that like would read every single comment on one of his songs. Like, and that's just not healthy, and that could really set him up for some bad shit. So at first I thought like, oh, it would have been nice to see this guy in the internet age, but now I'm not so sure about that. I'll have to leave it to the audience. What do you guys think?
You've convinced me. You've pulled me to your side.
Yeah, it sucks. So, alas, Wesley died on August 21st, 2003, due to complications from surgery, having been diagnosed with leukemia the year before. And he was just 40 years old. Which,
that's pretty young.
You may not think that's young if you're a teenager, but at our age, that's a pretty jarring age to die at. But thankfully, there are still plenty of people who remember Wesley fondly and are determined to keep his legacy alive. In 2013, the Wonder Woman comic series introduced a character named Milan, whose physical appearance and backstory are heavily inspired by Wesley Willis. Furthermore, Wesley's artwork has been featured in numerous exhibitions, including the Intuit Museum of Outsider Art in Chicago and the Muhammad Khalil Museum in Egypt. He was also honored with a star on the outside mural of the legendary First Avenue nightclub in Minneapolis.
I'm going to have to check that out next time I'm up there.
Yeah, obviously First Avenue nightclub, I don't think we even need to explain like how big that is with Prince and everybody who's played there. But the Intuit Museum of Outsider Art in Chicago, I've been there.
You have? All right, I want to check it out.
It's legitimately cool. Like, I think it's actually a free museum. Like, It's definitely one of the hidden gems of like Wicker Park. Like, definitely if you're in Chicago, check that place out. And I will just say, on a personal note, this is obvious by now, but I truly appreciate Wesley Willis's music. I don't know, honestly, if I could sit through a whole album of it most of the time, but it just gives me pure raw joy to hear Rock and Roll McDonald's or
cut the mullet or suck a caribou's ass. Like, that shit still resonates with me, and I like it just as much as I did when I was a teenager.
Same here.
And I just genuinely think that we need people like Wesley in the world. I don't mean that just as an example of how neurodivergent people can shine through adversity or, whatever cheesy narrative you want to spin like that. I just really think that we need people who can test the limits of what music can be to show us a way of doing things that no one else could have possibly imagined. In short, I think the world needs more weirdness, a lot more weirdness. And I, for one, am grateful that Wesley Willis did his part.
Hell yeah.
All right, that's it. Thank you guys so much. I think this is a perfect way to kick off 2024. If you want to find out who we're covering next, follow us on social media. We're still around. And if you want to email us, polishingturdspodcast@gmail.com. And of course, do not forget to give us a 5-star review on the app of your choice. Any more fun ways that people can support the show, Cal?
Suck a polar bear's dick. I don't know. I don't have any.
Play Suck a Polar Bear's Dick the next time you're at a zoo on your phone. And
tell them we turned you onto that song.
So this is the whole reason you're at the zoo, is because you've got polar bears on the mind because of Wesley shouting at his demons. All right. Rock over London, rock on Madison. Culvers, welcome to Delicious.
Playing rock music pays off. Rock and roll will never die. Making rock music keeps me moving every day down the streets. It keeps my ass working hard for the Lord. But thank God, in order for me to get money, I do not have to get a shotgun to go rob a gas station. Praise the Lord.